Is bending the truth now seen as the price of getting ahead in the job market? This week, we're joined by Tom O'Neill, multi-award winning keynote speaker, international author, and MD of cv.co.nz, to unpack the rise of career fishing and what it says about modern hiring. With reports showing that many job seekers are exaggerating qualifications during their search, should this trend be seen purely as deception, or is it in response to increasingly competitive expectations from employers? Also on today's show, signs of stability in the job market? Let's see what the results come through. And lastly, are you looking to hire quality talent fast? Again, we have another top 3 candidates who are ready for work across New Zealand. Kia ora koutou, no mai haere mai, and welcome to another episode of Mahi Matters, New Zealand's employment market update. Career fishing. This has become a growing problem in hiring, with more job seekers exaggerating their qualifications or experience to stand out. A report revealed that a staggering 93% of job seekers have committed career fishing in an attempt to get ahead in their search. It makes it more difficult for employers to assess real capability while leaving candidates exposed to serious credibility risks if the truth comes out. It also raises some important questions for both sides. Why is career fishing becoming more common? Where are candidates most likely to exaggerate? And how can employers spot the red flags without overlooking strong talent? To discuss this further, we're joined today by multi-award winning keynote speaker, international author, and MD of cv.co.nz, Tom O'Neill. Welcome, Tom.
Kia ora, my friend. Great to be on the show. Thank you.
No problems. As always, could you start off? Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career, and particularly cv.co.nz?
Cool, thank you. So, my background's HR management and recruitment. I'm a former executive recruiter and HR consultant for Deloitte. From there, after that, left there and started cv.co.nz. So, we do career coaching and personal branding for people in more than 50 countries around the world now. Off the back of that, I've written 4 books. My latest book, The New Rules for Job Hunting, is available. And as well as that, I've also written for the Harvard Business Review and The Economist. So, it keeps me off the streets.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that new rules for job hunting, I'm sure you'll have to keep putting out new editions for that ones as things are rapidly changing in this area.
Amen.
One of the things we're talking about today is this concept of career fishing. So, apart from being, the latest buzzword in this area, it's really growing in visibility. Is it fair to say
Yeah.
it's purely used as deception, or do you think it's more a reflection of how demanding and competitive the job market is currently?
I think, firstly, it's historic. I mean, career fishing's been going on forever. There was probably some guy going up to build the pyramids who told, the pharaoh he was working a couple of, a bit more experience than he had in stone chipping. It's just historic. Simple as that, the first thing. But today, with the rise of the competition we have and the ability to, if you want to be deceptive, to be able to do that to a much higher level, it unfortunately just seems a lot more prevalent. I think, we've got applications with hundreds of candidates, if not thousands of candidates on some occasions in New Zealand. And in some ways, that's been unprecedented. And so, in that respect, to be able to stand out, unfortunately, many people think, hey, look, I'll just tickle this degree up, or I'll add another 6 months to this role, or I'll say I did some projects I was kind of involved in, but wasn't really, these sort of things. Again, I think that's always been something actually taken place a lot more than usual.
Mm. And What areas do you think candidates are most likely to exaggerate or stretch the truth? So, is it technical skills, industry knowledge, and what can they do instead to present themselves strongly without crossing that line?
Yeah, cool. No, so in terms of that, I think all the areas,
Yeah.
qualifications, experience, technical skills, people are not going to be particularly choosy. If they're going to they're going to make one lie, they're probably then going to turn that to three. But, particularly, I mean, as employers, how often do you actually check that so and so, your lead candidate actually has a bachelor's of commerce, or that means some roles, obviously teaching, doctors, has to be very specific assessments, but for a change manager, actually, are they PMP certified? Do they actually have the master of commerce that they state they have? And on most occasions that's not going to be checked.
Mm,
Most occasions the employer is not necessarily going to rush out to Victoria University to see whether this person got their degree in 1996. And so again, unfortunately, that's a very easy area to suddenly up it a bit. As well as that, I know one candidate who put, a whatever it was, and then they put partially completed, and then when you speak to them, yeah, they did one paper. So there's a bit of inflation there. In terms of technical skills, yes, very simple to say that. Yeah, I'm very knowledgeable with certain things. I know that happened when I was a young guy. I thought I was pretty hot with Excel, and that was when things were Excel was sort of newish, um, and got into a corporate and managed to. Temporarily destroy their frequent flyer template.
oh, good.
Yeah, it's crazy. Thankfully, I'd made it back up, so that was a great learning curve for me about over marketing. But
Probably for
yeah,
them as well, in doing their checks.
absolutely. Oh yeah, but again, the ways you can look at doing it as a candidate is something quite different. You want to think about your achievements. Now, for most people, they've got achievements. Many people they may have been awarded further responsibility in their role. And I talk about the example of, let's say, a receptionist. That person is in this position. They want to apply for a role as office manager, but their CV says receptionist. Now, if they've been awarded further HR responsibility, accounts responsibility, some leadership responsibility, in effect, they are an office manager, but that job title holds them back. So we talk about being awarded further responsibility. Now, obviously, you want to get that checked. Confirmed by referees, but that's a way to actually highlight that without lying. Other things talk about being involved in projects and meeting KPIs, receiving positive confirmation or commendations from clients, again backed up ideally by email, setting up systems, putting new processes in place, sales, meeting exceeding KPIs. All this stuff shows the value of a person. And I think many people embellish a lot of their things because they don't actually know their achievements. And that's the heartbreak for me. Most Kiwis undersell themselves, because they don't know their value. And one thing I specialize in is helping people quantify these achievements so they can talk about their full career history with honesty, truth, and integrity, and sell their true value to an employer. But most people don't do that. They just say, "I've got a master's degree."
Yeah, that's right. And it's if there's frequent listeners or watchers out there, they've probably heard me bang on about this before. But I think in this kind of market, although it is improving, and we'll talk more about that later, there is that temptation to be able to go, I've got to get something, so I'll apply for more. And if I don't quite meet those things, well, maybe I'll just stretch the truth a little bit, or just plain
Mhm.
make something up. But again, it's that the energy going into that. If they spent it on identifying more selective opportunities that they are a really good fit for. And again, taking that time to expand on some relevant achievements or skills that are specific to that opportunity. I think that's a much better
Mm.
usage of time and effort, and is likely to be more effective. But understand it's difficult out there for job seekers.
Can I also add to that? These days it's very easy to be able to do online learning. So, to learn about AI, to learn about project management, or whatever it is. So instead of lying about it, why not actually spend some time on actually the online learning? So you can at least say, hey, look, I've completed this course or this certificate. Okay, sure, I don't have experience in whatever it is, but recently I've just completed this program, and that way you can talk about it with authenticity and integrity. It's up to date learning. It's something you can market to show your passion. That's a lot better than just saying, "Yeah, I'm PMP certified," when you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows that you're being proactive as well. If we flip things around, so from an employer's perspective, how can businesses protect themselves from career phishing without overlooking candidates, putting them all into the same pot and thinking they're all liars?
They're all
Um,
liars. Yeah,
yeah, who have real potential, but may not tick every box on paper.
yeah. It's really, it's just the hard work. It's partnering with someone like yourselves who is going to have integrity, who's going to work hard to make sure what is said is actually true. At that stage, you then, from an employer's perspective, making sure you've got good questions, really good behavioral questions to drill down and really ascertain whether or not this person has these skills. It's very easy to lie on your CV, but it's actually a lot more difficult to lie when you're sitting in front of someone having to give a real, true, honest example about a capability, through behavioral questions where an employer may ask, tell me about a time when you led a project or did whatever. And so having smart questions around there can really suddenly give you an understanding whether or not that person is actually capable in that space. They've got a great answer, they can roll out, make sense. Okay, great. Well, that's a positive. If they're really stretching and suddenly they come up with this miracle answer, that's when you might be a bit dicey. Again, other things, of course, referee checks are always super critical. I mean, in my career, have always been probably, arguably the most important part of the process in a way. Just making sure that actually someone who they've reported to previously can verify, obviously, these things. Again, also, not just saying, oh, I've got a BCom. All right, well, have you got a copy of the certificate? Have you got, if it's a master's degree, do we need to look at getting confirmation from the university? Because when you lie, you create risk, not just for yourself, but for the employer. And that's balanced. If you lie and say you're a orthopedic surgeon and you're not, that creates some pretty serious issues. But if you lie to get a job as a customer services rep, you may think, oh, well, there's not that many issues. But realistically, they stack up just micro in the background here and there. And then next thing you know, you're in a position where everything starts to unravel. So again, from an employer's perspective, making sure that they're checking the referees, checking the qualifications or certificates, but really asking good, deep, intelligent questions. And unfortunately, for many employers, they just sort of sit down in front of AI, put in a job description, say, right, ask me some questions about this. Think about also industry specific and also company specific questions that could be relevant to really help you drill down and find out if these people really have what they say they do.
Yeah, so it's a good point there in the importance of asking those smart questions, and also
Mm-hmm.
training your staff or going to a professional who does this kind of thing every day. Um, Going back to your example with Excel there, I think that the power of language and just sometimes the subtle differences. So if you had been asked, um, are you good at Excel? I'm sure you would have said yes, because you thought you were.
Yeah,
But the difference
yeah.
between asking that and something like, tell me about the kind of functions that you use in Excel and what you're able to do in there. So where they actually have to talk through, not just make it easy for them. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's not a really cynical approach. Your jobs as employers isn't to go out there and detect lies. That's not what it's about. But you also, you need to be aware that that's happening and not make it so
Mm.
easy for them as well.
Look, 100%. I mean, again, it's about protecting your company and your brand. I almost destroyed, a major part of an organisation in an afternoon. By mistake. Uh, I was smart enough to have backup, so that's fine. But again, this is what can this is the risk. We think, oh, it's just a senior admin role. Oh no, hold on, or it's just a sales role. I mean, someone's out there destroying your brand. I know of a story of a person who ticked, yeah, they've got no criminal convictions, got the job as a senior level sales rep. And then on week 2 of having their job as a sales rep, wrapped their car around a lamppost, DIC, and then it was actually, no, they did have criminal convictions for DIC. And suddenly the recruiter came to the employee came to the recruiter and said, what is going on? As you can imagine, that just brings massive risk. Even in
Mm.
a role we think there is no risk.
Yep, absolutely. Now, looking ahead, do you think career phishing will become more common, or will businesses start tightening their hiring process to push back against it? As you say, it's not a new problem. We've just got a fancy new word for it.
You title for it. Yeah,
Uh,
I hate to say it. Sorry, I hate to say it. It's always going to happen. Humans are humans. And forgive me, I'm not certainly bagging us all and going, oh, we're all terrible, but it's just human nature when they get frustrated to go, actually, look, I might just, and little things, I'll push this out. I had a gap for 2 months. Oh, well, it's easy. I'll just, chop that gap by moving the 2 months together, but the problem is it's, when as an employer and an employee, all we have is trust. That's all we have, particularly at that start. And if that trust is broken, even in the smallest thing, a missing date or incorrect, month here or there, that trust is gone. And now that trust is gone, it's so difficult to re-establish that trust. And will it increase? I mean, to be honest, I think it's pretty rife now and always has been. We just have to be smarter employees and candidates with more integrity. That's asking a lot. But at the end of the day, when there's competition, there's always going to be shortcuts. It's as simple as that. I don't want to say people are bad or evil or anything like that necessarily, but when there's competition, people are going to come up with new and innovative ways to try and stand out ahead of the pack. So it's up to the employer to make sure that this person is what they say they are, really, at the end of the day.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as you say, it's about being aware. We are all humans and we all do these things from time to time. So just to be aware of that and to, as you say, safeguard your business against that and to be on the lookout without getting cynical. Thank you so much for coming on board today, Tom. Really appreciate it. Some great conversations there. Tom's details will be on the screen. So if you want to reach out, sounds like he's got some excellent advice for people there. Make sure to get in touch. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora. Just one last thing. Very happy for your audience to get a free copy of my book, The New Rules for Job Hunting. You can just email me direct, tom@cv.co.nz, tom@cv.co.nz. Happy to send out a free copy.
Fantastic. Look, guys, free gifts. Awesome. Let's move on to Mahi Matters. Signs of stability and maybe a bit of Kiwi stubbornness too. So, this week's unemployment figures brought some cautiously positive news, with the rate dipping slightly to 5.3% in the first quarter of the year. After the run of pretty grim economic headlines we've had over the past 18 months, I think most of us will happily take a win even though it might be quite a modest one. What's particularly interesting is that these figures include the beginning of the recent fuel crisis and oil shock, but really that only impacted about a month or so of the quarter, so the January to March quarter. So the true test will be what happens next. But honestly, I'm feeling reasonably optimistic. So there's a growing sense that Kiwi businesses are really just a bit sick of being held hostage by geopolitics, fuel prices, elections, and global uncertainty. At some point, businesses still need to grow, projects still need to happen, and people still need to be hired. And I think we're starting to see more organizations starting to just get on with things and continue rebuilding. And that lines up with the latest Seek data as well. So job ads were up again in March, rising 0.8% month on month, but a whopping 13% year on year. So continuing the steady recovery we've been talking about since late 2025. Seek also reported applications per ad falling for the sixth consecutive month. So perhaps we'll see a bit of easing on things like career phishing brought about by those extreme competition levels. The strongest growth is still coming from the sectors driving real economic activity. So things like construction, trades, engineering, manufacturing, and logistics. And regionally, it's encouraging to see momentum spreading beyond the main centres, although it would be good to have some more positive news for Auckland and Wellington, particularly. And we're seeing particularly strong results in parts of the South Island and regional North Island. So that doesn't mean that the market suddenly becomes easy, of course. It's still competitive, businesses are still cautious, and job seekers are still feeling the pressure, which probably explains why we're hearing more now about things like career phishing. But overall, this feels like another step in the right direction. Not booming, not back to post COVID hiring frenzy, that's for sure, but steady recovery and importantly, resilience. And after the last few years, Kiwi businesses have become pretty good at operating through uncertainty. Well, that's it for this week's show. Thanks for joining us again. As always, we'd love to hear your comments and experiences. Feel free to comment on any of our channels. And if there's a topic you'd like us to explore, if you want to be a guest on the show, we'd love to hear from you and have you come on board. See you next time. Matua.